we'll crap. Just turn on the microphone. Okay, I think it caught me now. All right, anywho, what we have here is a quick tutorial that I'm going to give you, showing you how to use drivers, I think in a very practical way. All right, so what I'm going to show you how to do is use a driver to toggle an object's visibility in the viewport. We'll just give you a basic example of how that works, or how that would work. I have this empty selected here. That's what this is an empty. I have basically the entirety of this scene parented to the empty. So if I move the empty, you can see those objects move with it because it's parented. Okay, so what we're going to do here is show you what this thing can do right now. I said a practical example. So there's more to this scene than what you see here. If I go ahead and toggle on this roof, it brings back the roof, but there's no beams to support that roof, so let's bring in some beams. And as you can see, I'm able to iteratively introduce or reintroduce elements of my scene back in with this toggle. Now, what this is basically a driver version of your viewport renderability, or not renderability, but your viewport visibility that you have in the outliner. Okay, same thing over here. That's what this is, turning on and off the eyeballs, but I put a driver on it. So I think that's handy dandy. But obviously, if you're watching the tutorial, not obviously, but it's likely that you don't know how to do this or how to institute this. So this is how I did it. And this is why I'm saying practical, because you can actually use this doing something instead of having a halfway random use of a driver moving. I'm not going to talk bad about it at all, but I think this is practical. This is something that you could use. Okay, so let's set it up. I'm trying to keep this down to about 10 minutes. Doesn't take 10 minutes to set it up, but I'm trying to keep the video down like that. All right, so what we want to do is basically recreate what I just showed you with the roof and the beams. We're going to be hiding these particular elements here. So I have them named. I'm naming them trusses. So we're going to do trusses. We're going to we're going to hide the trusses. All right, first thing you want to do is the components of this. You're going to need a custom property, and you're going to need to set up a driver. All right, so custom property, let's set that up. We're going to click the empty that everything's associated with here, and we're going to create a custom property. If you go over here to your object panel, scroll down. You're not going to go to the empty panel, because if you scroll there, there's no custom property. There's no properties. It's going to be under the object data. All right, so I have the objects, or I have the empty selected. I go over here to my object data, scroll down, and you got these properties here. You won't have these because I typed these in. I created these, but this is where you go. It'll be like this. You click custom properties, and then you add one. Now the one that we just added is right there. It's got nothing in it. So let's edit that and make it applicable to what we're doing here. So the property name, we're going to be hiding the trusses. So I'm going to call it trusses. I'm going to name it one underscore addict dot truss. That works for me. And we'll leave it at that for now. What I did is just pause it, or I just did that real quickly so I could see if this thing lines up. And it does. That works. Okay, cool beans. Now we weren't done. I just skipped out of it. So let's go back. Something I do want to do though while I'm here, I'm going to make a mental note of what that name is. So it was one underscore addict dot truss. That will be very important here shortly. Okay, if you see the difference between these numbers here, this is a float. This is what they call a float. It has a decimal in it. You don't want floats if we're dealing with booleans, and that's what we're dealing with in this particular driver example, because we're turning this parameter on or off. There is no in between with this parameter, correct? That's a given. You click this eyeball here, it goes on or it goes off. There's no halfway open. It doesn't do that. So it's called a boolean, true or false. So this float is no good. We need to change that. So let's finish finishing this thing out. Property value 1.0 is basically giving it the ability to be a float. So we're going to change that to a simple 1, absolute integer or absolute value. Property value minimum is going to be 0, and the property value maximum is going to be 1. We want a simple on or off. Under the tooltip, It's asking you to type in what does it do. This is optional, but I like to do it. What it's going to be doing is toggling the visibility of the trusses. So that's all it does. So this is set up now. We now have our custom property. If you go over here and click this empty here, I bring out my properties panel. There it is right there. And if I hover over it, it tells me what it does. Toggles the visibility of the truss. Cool beans. So we got that set up. That's one component. Second component is to create that driver. So we select, what do we want the driver to do? Well, we want it to hide these trusses. So you click the trusses to hide it. I need to clear that up a little bit. I'm trying to keep this timer down, but I don't want to just say that and then you run off and think that that's what you need to do. You're selecting the trusses, but you're over here actually selecting the eye. You want to hide it in the viewport. So let's find this real quickly. We have the trusses selected. Under here, it tells you what the name of it is. Attic complete trusses. So we're going to go to a current scene here. We're going to type in trusses. And there it is right there. It's empty. It's a child of the empty attic master move, which is not relevant right now. What is relevant is I just located this object, attic complete trusses. As you can see, there's no driver because nothing's purple here. When you see purple, you mean driver, or you know that it's indicating there's a driver present. So under this eye here, you see they disappear, and now they're back. And now they disappear and vice versa. Okay, so what we want to do is just hover our mouse cursor over that eye, Control D. That's going to it's a hotkey that you can bring up to add a driver. We're going to manually create later. And it created a driver now. Because now, well, I was going to say that I can't select it and turn it on and off. But usually you can't do that. Maybe it's a little different with the viewport visibility. I'm not sure. But what we want to do is click this, and if you go over here, it shows you what I have open here. I'll show you real quickly. F-curve. This is your what does they call it? Your graph editor. So let's just scroll. I have these windows kind of bunched up or whatever. But if you're going to change your window type, right? You're going to change it to graph editor, and there it is. And F-curve, not useful right now. That's for animations. You need to have it on driver. And if this doesn't populate, let's say you have that selected. Well, you don't have a driver on that. If it's empty and you're in the driver's window, you need to click on what you have the driver on. Well, in this case, we had it on the attic trusses. So now it shows you that there it is. It's a slope. So we're going to click on restrict view, which happens to be what the driver is. Press N, because this is a window just like anything else. Press N to bring up your properties panel. And now this is where you can make edits to your driver. So in this particular case, we're not using a transform channel, rotational difference, or a distance. We're just going to be using a single property, and that's going to have to do with that custom property we just created. All right, now under the property, we're going to click this empty that we created that custom property on, and this name that we named it is going to be the path. Now there's a caveat here. You're going to type it as such. That's open square brackets, open quotation marks, and then you type it in the middle. So what I have here is, as you can see here, I already know, I've known this for the last 9 minutes I've been giving this tutorial. I don't have screen keys enabled, or screencast keys. I tried to look online to install it, and I found it on GitHub, but I'm just nervous about downloading Python scripts and possibly having problems. So if somebody can direct me for a surefire screencast keys add-on that's vouched for by the community, then I'll install that. And I'd like to have screencast keys too for the viewers, but I just don't right now. So sorry about that. All right, back to this. You want to make sure that you have this square brackets, open quotation marks, type in your name, your path name, make sure it's verbatim, and then quotation marks and close the square brackets. So now we have that installed there. All right, we're gonna have to change this scripted expression. We're gonna change it from its current status, change it to maximum value. Now, what that does, as you can see, they disappeared. And if you go to select your empty here, and then you can just toggle it back on. That's the roof, my bad. Toggle it back on. Where is it? At the truss right here? Here we go. The way that worked is that, let's go back to that driver real quickly. The maximum value, I'm going to show you why that worked real quickly, and that'll be the end of the video because I've shown you how to do it now. But I'm going to show you why that worked. Okay, we got a lot of information here, so I'm trying to finish this up. I'm 30 seconds overdue, but I think this is important too. Okay, looking at this here, at this particular driver setup. Okay, we're using maximum value. If you recall, the maximum value that we set that property at was at 1. So let's look. I'm selecting the empty now, and we're going into our object panel here, and we're looking at our, where is it at? Right here, edit. Okay, so our max is 1 and our minimum is 0. If I set that driver to 1, it's turning that turning the viewport visibility to false because this is a Boolean. It's either 0 or 1. Let's go back to the here we go, to the driver. Okay, so let's go back to the driver. We're going to change this back to scripted expression. It's false. You see that? So false means you can see it. Let's turn that to true. And then it goes away. So if true is making it go away and false is making it come to fruition, so to speak, opposite of true, I'm not changing this expression by changing this scripted expression. I know that doesn't make sense. With me going to a different option is what I'm trying to say. I'm not changing the value from false. See, nothing happened. I just changed it to maximum value. But if I go into that empty and change it to, it's at 0 right now. I change it to 1, that maximum value, there it is. So hopefully that cleared that up a little bit. But now you see that we were able to institute what we wanted to do. So I want to bring back the beams, turn them back on. And at this point, it's just intuitive. I mean, you're just bringing in the elements or whatever. But I think you should have learned something from this. I think that's pretty helpful. And then you can go over this video as many times as you want to, slow it down, rewind, etc., etc. But I also think that ending, me explaining that was, I think it'll clear things up a little bit. So, cool beans. Again, I hope that was helpful and appreciate your time.